Welcome to People Matters by Shiluba. I am your host, Gulani Shilubani. In today's episode, we'll be discussing all things employment as a small business owner. My guest is Buyi Mafoko. Buyi, thank you so much for your time and welcome to People Matters. Tell the peeps out there a little bit about yourself before we get started.
Hi, Kulani. Hi to your guests. Thank you so much for the invite to be part of this amazing platform that is also needed. I am Buyi Mafoko. I think as I've already been introduced, I'm a student more than anything. And I say that because how I encounter the world is through learning. And I've really expressed that through academics and constantly pursuing new information and new areas to learn. As it currently stands, I'm in the pivot of my career, a very interesting space that I'm navigating.
Okay.
Well, not a former as such, but graduated initially in the sports science field. So I was in the medical space. Found this love in marketing, and I cannot explain how the two connect. And I've grown, I think, in that area to really become a seasoned marketing professional in the executive sense. Started my own business with all of 2 years corporate experience. Entrepreneurship, I think, is really at the essence of who I am. I've then just grown, organically, and I've worked my way, even as a business owner, I've worked my way from really the foundations of doing the very entry level work and graduated or promoted myself through merit and through experience over the past, now, geez, I exited corporate in 2010.
Okay.
So over the past 11 or 12 years or so. And most recently, my new area and my new passion, which I think will be my forever career really, is luxury brand marketing. And we can go into that a little bit, but I think that is really the very extensive elevator pitch of who Buyi is.
Oh, wow, Buyi, that sounds so exciting. And that last part about luxury marketing brands, honey, you know me, I like things. So I'm very, very excited.
I know you do. How I know.
Oh, goodness, you know me too well. I'm so excited for that new venture. But, in today's conversation, I really want to talk about, you as a business owner, especially when it comes to around building a team, around leadership, and your number one, your experience in that particular area, as well as, little nuggets that you might be able to share with the audience and other business owners that might, learn from your experience. I always say we don't always need to make the same mistakes as everybody who's made them. We can learn from other people's mistakes. And I think this will be a great conversation, especially for people who are starting out, and even maybe people who've been in the game for a bit longer, but just keep bumping into the same wall. I think your experience and what you've been through as a business owner is going to be fantastic as a learning tool for them, and also just as an interesting conversation to have. And also, I think it will be interesting for employees to also have insight of what it actually is from the other side of the spectrum. So thank you so much for that. I always say, when people say to me, how's the road to entrepreneurship been? And I always say, they say, start a business, they said. It will be fun, they said. Such lies. Oh my goodness. Because yes, it is fun.
Had we known.
Had we known, had we known. And I just wanted to find out, when you are looking at bringing people onto your team, what are some of the qualities that you look for in team members that are going to be joining your organization?
Well, thank you for that question. And I don't know if we can fully satisfy the response in this platform because I remains an area of discovery. However seasoned you are in interviewing people, in your role as leadership in making decisions around how you bring people in and for what purpose.
Yeah.
Because the reality is your business has seasons, like I always love the analogy of seasonality because it allows always to place myself at the season that the business is in. And at different seasons, if we just look at the 4 seasons we have, you need different nourishment at different seasons for different things. So at the foundations of my business, for example, we needed a very different set of skills and we were solving for a different set of requirements. And that was purely just being able to service the business that we had and the business that we were getting and acquiring from clients. At that point, I must be honest, I don't think I was very much clear on my vision on people. I just was looking for talent and capability at that very point. As we've grown over the years, and this probably comes from my natural disposition for authenticity. I try and with who I am, because I always say the consistency isn't who you are, and whatever the setting, that must hold. And for me, I try for that experience, or at least for people having that experience of me, to be similar. Because if we don't know who we is today, geez, what kind of boss or leader am I getting today? Because she's all over the place. So for me, I really have worked on myself first and foremost to ensure that I am articulate in who I am. I'm also articulate in what I stand for and consistent with that, right? But naturally, all evolving, we're all growing. So that may take a different level of understanding or depth. But to bring it back to the question, Bulani, I think at this very present moment, and I must say, probably in the last 10 years or so of the business, the focus has then really shifted on culture within the organization. I am intrinsically a people first type of leader. And I therefore, for me, look for the authentic sense of the person, because we know interviews, in interviews, we show up with a facade really of who we are, because it is a sales pitch. It is, we're pitching ourselves to a potential employer. And I always, my format of interviewing has always been very different. And I've just found a natural place in that to say, at the point where we're inviting you for the CV can speak for itself, and hopefully you're looking at a really good and well put together CV or portfolio. However, we're getting you to the point of inviting you to an interview. I then always say that we've half or 50% assessed the fact that you can do the job. However, in an interview, I look for the character in the person, because I'm very sacred with the culture that we've been able to build as Matte Black. And we call ourselves the maestros, which speaks to a collective philosophy of us being agile, us being adaptable, and us being constantly open to evolution. And so as the maestros, I protect that identity by ensuring that the next person we bring through the door fits who and what we stand for as the maestros. I want your whole self to show up, because the work in itself does take up a significant part of what we do when we occupy certain roles. However, there's the human. I always say it's not machines that do the work. There's the human behind the title. And it's important for me to humanize people in that sense, as junior or as senior as they may be. So key thing for me in what I look for when trying to hire a person is really chemistry. And the chemistry may not naturally come at that point, but the more experienced you become, and I think as somebody who works with people, the more you would appreciate that the more experienced you come, you really can't be fooled by the pitch. you are able to also hear past. I think, to be fair, I run a Black-owned agency and predominantly Black-staffed organization. You have to sometimes listen past the English or the fluency of the English. Because sometimes you're speaking to somebody with the best technical capability, but their English is not the best. But you have to be able to have an ear to listen past that. And I think it takes a level of appreciation and time to be able to say, you may not be the best in enunciating certain terms, but you certainly are the best for the role, and you fit the culture and what we stand for as an organization.
Oh my goodness, I love that. I absolutely, absolutely, absolutely love that. You know, I've been advocating for interviews to actually happen in a language that somebody is most comfortable in. I remember going through social media as one does, and one gentleman was talking about how in the I think in the IT space, and especially around Pretoria in South Africa, Johannesburg, I mean, in South Africa, Pretoria, they actually have companies that allow people to be interviewed in Afrikaans because that's the language that they're most comfortable in. And in my mind, I was like, we need to do that with other vernacular languages, because at the end of the day, for me, your ability to speak English has nothing to do with your ability to do the job. You could be a great designer, a great executive of a team or whatever, but maybe English is not everybody's mother tongue, but that doesn't show me how talented or how capable you are at doing your job. So I'm a big advocate of people being interviewed in the language that they feel most comfortable in, because that's when you actually get to see the person beyond the facade that we try to bring up in interviews, because as you said, it is a sales pitch. So I definitely love that, and I can't wait to actually see it happen more often in the job market, and I think would be able to allow more people into the circle, as they say, because so many people bomb interviews because we want to interview them in English, but their English is not so great. I mean, imagine me having to take an interview in Afrikaans, guys. Of course I would bomb it. Like
and you just don't come through as honestly and as authentically as the essence of who you are, right?
Yeah.
So I really love that there's that conversation happening around the HR people space, because it is absolutely something that is critical in terms of being able to localize and therefore bring the experience closer to people who are, who could be the best candidate for the job, but get disqualified invariably by their ability to articulate themselves.
100%, 100%. And tell me, what have been some of the challenges and successes that you have faced while building your team over the years?
Wow. I mean, they're daily, aren't they?
They really are.
They really are. If we're fully honest, I don't think you ever sit at the end of the rainbow and say, I've cracked it. Because people are people, and they themselves go through their own seasons. So if I'm to bring it back to that analogy of seasons, you may come into my organization purely because you're looking for money. It's a cost to company thing. It's a thing of being able to hit the next income bracket. It's a thing of being able to buy your first house or car. Whereas I'm solving for being able to build a solid team, and individuals that have the temperament to build with me. And you just here thinking, I'm just going to do hit a year in this role and move on to the next senior role and right?
Right.
And we all know that the journey of building a career looks different for different people. And so sometimes it's that mismatch. Sometimes it is the right candidate. They are the best skilled to do the job. However, where they are in their career, contradicts where we are as an organization and with our clients, because we don't have a business without clients. So once we have the business, being able to match that with the people that are the right fit as well, because, and we can get into a little bit around that, the importance of that partnership between client and agency, as it were, in our instance. But some of the I think where I've experienced challenges, it's been in those instances where we were not in the right season between ourselves and the employee, right? And I gracefully bow out of those relationships, because I know how much myself and our management team has worked to build a culture that is probably amongst the best in our industry, because there's such a revolving door, there was a point where we were sitting with, our staff turnover was so low. We had people in their mid-20s who had been pushing 5 to 7 years with us.
Oh, wow.
And that's when you really transcend employer-employee relationship to get to the point of then partnership, because you bring your skill set, I bring my organization and what it stands for, and at the back of that, we're able to jointly solicit business together. But to acquire and to keep the business, it's really then, like I always say, I don't own the business, because I wouldn't do the jobs that our 20 plus people do as an individual.
Yeah.
So I relinquish my control by saying that each and every person owns the business. And so you must understand that whether you're driving or you're in client services or you're in strategy, you're running your own business invariably. And all I do is create a platform for that to happen and equip you with tools for you to be able to run your business. Because if you're servicing a portfolio of 3 or 4 clients, it's your business. I don't get to sit and know what's happening daily on that client. I have the benefit of driving the strategy overall as an organization in terms of what we stand for. And so where I've experienced successes, I think, is there. It's when the employee transcends the, I'm just here to get something out and you need to give it to me. Or I'm just buying a skill from you and you need to give that to me. And at the end of the month, it's transactional. I just pay you and we're good. Where people really start to take ownership, where people really start to be passionate about the things that you are passionate about.
Yeah.
Where people really start to remind you, because as an entrepreneur, people don't always have sight of the other challenges that you're facing. It could be cash flow challenges at the time. It could be your own personal stresses that catch you in those discouraging moments. But then when you sit in a team and you sit with staff members or you sit with management team that's able to remind you of the why we started, to say, but where they own the vision so much that it's no longer yours, and they hold themselves accountable to that vision, that I think is where the success for me has come. And in the challenges, I think I've already spoken to that, to say it's when people merely come in and the seasons are mismatched. And I don't blame that, because we are solving for different things at different points in our life.
Yeah, goodness. I love that season analogy. And I think that's something that business owners should be cognizant of, is that, it's important, number one, to understand the season that your business is in and what that season needs from a input from a human capital perspective as well. And also understanding the season that people are in as they come into your organization as well. And realizing that there will definitely be mismatches, guys. I always say, it's amazing how we want to live this harmonious lives with people who we share some similarities with, but our backgrounds are very vastly different. I always say, for me, the analogy I always make is that if I can fight with my mom, who carried me for 9 months, raised me. What more, some other stranger raised by some other stranger I know nothing about, you know? So it's important it's important to understand that there's so many nuances that come from being an actual human being. And I also really like what you said in terms of people bring their whole selves into the organization and into their work. People need to stop fighting me on this, because I keep saying it and people keep affirming what I'm saying, because I cannot show up in my organization just as the director, but forget everything else that makes Kulani Kulani and expect that I'm going to work productively and efficiently without those other aspects of who I am outside of, you know, my core competencies as an HR and labor law professional. For me, it never makes sense. People do bring their entire selves into the workplace. And what employers don't understand is that we actually benefit from people bringing their whole selves outside of their core competencies.
I mean, spot on. And I echo that so much, to the extent that think of you in the instances where you were happiest at work, where you were most productive. It's when you really were working under the helm of a leader or a part of a team that saw you, that appreciated the very refined palette of you and didn't shut that down, because it does introduce a very unique perspective, even in the work that we do. Because, I mean, in marketing, we talk about storytelling, and we talk about, and we will always apply this to when we're crafting campaigns and really trying to connect with the consumer on the other side. But if we were to bring closer and put it into practice first within our teams, I think really compelling work would come out of organizations. Really powerful, innovative, human-centric solutions would come out of organizations, whether you were in IT or legal or whatever discipline. Because, I mean, when I sit in an interview, I'm not interested in where you studied, because you've probably articulated that in your CV. I'm more interested in what is your home setting? Because for me, it indicates the fact that Kulani comes, right now she could be living alone in a province that's away from her own family. And so I'm already being mindful that there are dynamics that I need to solve or manage or make provision for there. You know, I can't expect, if Kulani has a newborn, I can't expect Kulani to be working the crazy agency hours. But I get an understanding if, you know, I get an understanding if I'm able to connect with the person, because the work will come easier if I'm able to connect with the person and I understand what, you know, like I'll ask, what are you passionate about? And at this point, in terms of where the organization is, I did mention that we're rebuilding our organization post-COVID, and it's allowed us to really refine and hone in on what we're good at. And, you know, we're 16 years in, and we've lived a few lifetimes, I must mention, and I keep saying that we've had to close and start the business a couple of times over, because we had different horizons. And this point now, it feels like we've come full circle. It feels like our natural environment in which we should be operating in. And from that, because it's so authentic and so honest, we're having a better connection with clients and with the right tactics, because we don't want to just service any client. We want to service a client that is as passionate about certain things when it comes to their consumer. So if it's an FMCG client and we're trying to sell nappies, I want a client that I connect with at a level where it's not just about the work. It's about how we're changing people's lives by delivering compelling solutions or educating consumers about how else you can use or maximize on your pack of nappies for the month. That kind of stuff is where, for me, I think even when we've seen really magical work, the most memorable campaigns that you remember, or adverts that you remember, are when it really touched on the human sentiment and the powerful spirit of people, didn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
And
Yeah.
so, and so I think I always try and connect with that, even in an interview, in really soliciting the person. And most times I, we get feedback even from an interview where somebody says, just for the culture alone, I'd love an opportunity to work for the organization, even in a lesser role,
Oh, wow.
because I think it aligns with who and where I am and the type of career that I'm really building for themselves. So that's always affirming for me. I always also say that our organization hasn't grown at the rate that it should have, because if you look at a 16-year-old business, you we can't easily match it alongside other 16-year-old businesses, because maybe we've obsessed too much on that culture, maybe we've obsessed too much on people, and maybe we've obsessed too much on authenticity, because we really couldn't do the work that we do without being authentic. You have to take off your face mask, you have to take off the face to be able to see the consumer, because we work in township and rural markets predominantly.
Yeah.
And so you can't show up there with your Santaness and just
and
expect
to connect.
Thank you.
Like, how would you do that? I mean, like, oh my goodness. Sure.
So I think and I tell that to my team, to say, context is very important, because all of us come from a village, a township, so it's, you also don't. And for a long time, the organization was just 100% Black staffed organization as well, because it's where we were, and it's how we could, there were also diverse minds in that, even though everybody was Black. But we've since moved on from that, and we've diversified a little bit more. But because of where we work, again, it would be difficult if you don't have a background, if you haven't lived and bathed in a Vascom, for you to understand how you maximize a bar of soap across an entire family, and to be able to bring that into a client that is selling bars of soap every day, to create a campaign. There's such a realness and there's such an honesty that comes through invariably when you tap into your own story and background.
Yeah, that image that you just spoke about, washing in a Vascom and trying to maximize soap, just reminds me vividly of me growing up. And, when you finish a bar of soap, my gran would always connect it to the new one. It wasn't the situation where you're throwing away soap because you're throwing away resources. My gran would always make us stick the old soap to the new soap, if that makes any sense.
It's a science. It's a whole, you become a chemist in that moment, because you really, that slither of sunlight or whatever it is, has to continue and have its life in the next bar of soap. And you just keep joining these bars of soap that invariably just, and in fact, certain families would keep them and melt them together to create a new bar altogether.
Exactly.
So,
and I still do that as an adult. I still do that to this day.
I love that.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So I love that. And I just love how, and I think this is why you and I connect so much. I just love the authenticity that comes through in what you are building and the people that you are building it with, and how it just sort of like beams through. And I think even as people are listening to us have this conversation, for me, I'm actually also sitting where I'm sitting, and I'm just closing my eyes and I'm just thinking, goodness, if push comes to shove, I might put my application there at MedBlack,
and we are actively recruiting.
Yes, they are actively recruiting. And will you just tell me, what do you think leading other people has taught you about yourself? Because there's nothing more that teaches you about you than when you have to manage and lead other people?
Yeah, I mean, I started off by saying that I remain a student, you know, and I also at some point in my life as a young entrepreneur remember someone sharing with me that you need to stay open to learning. And they actually made this analogy for me to say at different points in any given relationship where there's two humans, you're either a student or a teacher in that moment.
Oh, wow.
And certain moments call you to be a student, however senior, however executive you might be. Whereas other roles, you're called to lead, you're called to be the teacher. And if you look at a classroom setting, sometimes it's the student that can stand up and show their peers how they landed that biology specimen thing, how they understand themselves. Whereas the teacher, who's a lot more experienced, a lot more intelligent, is so academic about it that it doesn't land with the students, right?
You're right.
So I always stay with my team. And, you know, we're not a very hierarchical organization in the true sense. Yes, you have to come in and be appointed under a certain role linked to a cost to company or employment level to it in terms of seniority. However, in the true sense of how we operate, we're not very hierarchical, because I always say that you don't know where the answer is going to come from. You know, we could be sitting here trying to crack a brief on liquid soap, and the lady in the kitchen who is auntie who does our teas, and she's the one that uses Sunlight liquid soap every day.
Yeah.
And we should dare to bring her into a briefing session or a brainstorming session where she can say, actually, I've seen the liquid soap become a lot less viscous. And because of that, I'm going through it a lot quicker, right? So I think for me it's been a lesson at transcending ego, because my egos can say you're the co-founder, you're the MD. However, my true sense and my ability to transcend the ego says I could learn from an intern, because this is a youth-related brief and they are the target market. So I constantly break down those barriers of saying, let's not just ascend to this pedestal just because we're senior creatives or senior strategists and fail to realize that the solution can come from anywhere. And so for me, back to the question then, my ability to lead and really what leading people has taught me about myself is to purge ego every day. And I try and do that through my spiritual practices. You know, I'm very much faith inclined.
Yeah.
And that space calls you, it demands for you to transcend and to purge yourself. Because I think leadership, people don't realize, is service at the heart of it.
100%. Sure. Yeah.
I cringe at these people who, you know, especially as women, who, as we ascend in the ranks, we start being called the B word. Whereas for me, as the more I grow, is the more I shrink actually in who I am, the more less of me there is by proportion to the people that I'm leading, because I realize that, you know, the bigger my team becomes, the more people I have to be able to serve, essentially.
Yeah.
Because service is who I am. I serve. I always tell my friends, anyone, I'm like, how I love is through service and through gifts. So I give and I serve. And so I can't divorce myself from that service, even as a shareholder, even as whatever title you want to give me, because it's being able to serve the lady at the reception desk to the extent of, you know, creative directors and other business partners. And so that's how I'm able to know and be able to discern. And I spend a lot of time working on self to purge self in order to be able to discern, is this a moment for you to teach or be taught? And any, because then I know, because it then informs your conduct, Kulani.
Yeah.
Student doesn't speak at the same time as a teacher. They sit, they settle down, they take a pen, they take a notebook, they take notes. They raise their hand, questions where they seek clarity. A teacher, because also the role of a teacher, we would all love to be a teacher in every situation.
Yeah.
But it means you being responsible enough to inform and educate yourself with the content that allows you to teach others. Because we don't want an empty vessel here.
Yeah.
Because you'll quickly betray the depth and the content of who you are if you don't know the subject that you're talking about. Because I work with some of the smartest strategists, people who spend time reading, looking at markets, looking at segments, looking at trends. And I just, and some of these guys are half my age, and I just marvel. And I'm just like, what? And it lands something for myself. And I'm like, okay, I could, because I'm constantly ideating, okay, I can, and I keep my notes, and I'm like, okay, I can see how I can go back to this the next time. So that is how really I'm able to lead people. And this makes me, I think, by feedback I've received, a better leader.
Sure, I would agree.
And I still stay connected with people that, they stay being maestros, because we're also a family-owned business. And so it's difficult for anyone to come into the organization and not break their mold to become part of the family. And you don't divorce family. You could leave and go to a different country or a different environment, but really our staff have stayed family. We call them up, we check on them. A lot of them are having kids and starting families now. So it's really beautiful to see how you, because people don't want to go back if they didn't have a good time
Yes.
in that particular phase of their lives. They don't go back, but a lot of them, we stay connected with them, and it's family at the end of the day. You celebrate seeing a promotion that they're getting, for some of the reference and employment reference. And so you're able to really give a clean, beautiful, honest reference. So I endeavor to serve always.
Awesome. I love that. I love that. I always say that for me, leadership is built on 3 pillars. And the first one is where you and I completely agree, and we are synergized in that particular regard. But I think you would probably agree with me on the other 2 pillars. For me, leadership is service, it is support, and it is to advocate for the people that you are leading. That's what
That
for
last,
me. You were saying?
that last part. I'm saying that last part is so critical.
Yes,
to advocate.
you have to advocate. As a leader, if you're not advocating for the people you're leading, then as the kids would say, what must can happen to these people that you're leading?
Precisely.
Yeah. So for me, though, it's very important. And I also love the analogy that you make about, at different points, you're either the teacher or you are the student. And I always say that if you always want to be the teacher, at some point you're going to be an empty vessel because nobody's pouring into you. Because I think for me, good teachers are good students because they allow themselves to be poured into. And when you allow yourself to be poured into, it just gives you more to pour out. It gives you a sustainability and a stance that allows you to grow in the field of being a teacher. Studentship makes good teachership, if there's such a word. Is there such a word? Yes, long. But anyway.
We've just started the word. It's our word now. Studentship, teachership.
There we go.
That's
Amen. Amen. That's exactly, that's exactly it. And tell me, I think, as we come to a close, I just want to, have this particular conversation is the family-owned side of it and, running business with a significant other, a family member. How do you juggle that particular set of circumstances? Because obviously there's a merging of relationships, the lines get a little bit blurred. How have you navigated that?
Oh, well, interesting. I think it takes a great deal of maturity, which I can't say started off having. But you were certainly deliberate about growing. And my business is co-founded with my husband, and we're still married, and we are raising 2 boys. So
see, this is what I wanted the people to know. It's possible, guys.
It means we haven't killed each other yet. It has not always looked perfect, I must add, but it's taken continuous or consistent willingness to grow and to learn. Sometimes I think at the very initial stages, and especially when you don't have a big team, and you're a lot more involved in the business, there are very little boundaries in terms of home work. But it was a necessary season, and I think we understood and perceived the season for what it was. Look at a seed. When the person, if you have a seed and that you want to plant, you've got to prepare the environment for the seed to grow in.
Yes.
And for us, we realized that it was only us that could prepare the environment for the seed, because the seed is the vision of the business that we wanted to develop and to grow. And working the soil meant very little time sometimes to family, more time spent really just turning the soil, putting the nutrients. And we were honest about that, but we were also clear about the fact that it won't be forever. As we grew, so as we started seeing shoots from different seeds that we were planting, we then had to entrust that there could be someone that could water it, there could be someone that could, take on different roles in what is required on pruning it, because it's again that clutch balance, isn't it, of knowing when to release and when to accelerate on certain areas. Because I think for me personally, as a woman and as a leader in that role or in that position, I had difficulty delegating because I had learned how to do the different things, because you're the receptionist and the driver and the finance person and all of it. And so my coaching and my mentorship was really around being able to trust and to be able to know what to release when. Because also releasing too early sometimes can be very damaging, but releasing at the right degree and scaling yourself back. The clients also become increasingly reliant on you, and they demand with you. But it's also for us has been a constant and an ongoing conversation with our clients, who really have become partners, most of them, that we've serviced over 8 years, being able to have that conversation to say, we've entered a different stage of the business. These are some of the changes that we're implementing, so that they're not alarmed or they're not wary that, oh, now the quality is going to drop because I'm no longer dealing with Buyi. And it remains, I think, Kulani, respect. All of it is respect. I think respect for me is one of my cardinal values that I just like, there's no room for disrespect. And so being able to respect that he's a professional and that him respecting that I'm a professional meant that we could lead from our strengths, because I respect him and he respects me. And so our delegation of duties were singing to our strengths, essentially. And that's why we could build the thing, we could build at the sustainability of being able to, I think, really have a solid foundation in our organization. He's since moved on from in the operational sense to other ventures because we're entrepreneurs. And I'm very much in that transitional stage of, really being able to hand over the reins to the next, level of leadership, to be able to pursue other ventures, like I mentioned, my new love, which is calling me to be a student in this next season of luxury. And so I'm excited at the challenge of being able to learn and being able to spend my time immersed in reading, studying the subject, meeting people that know more about it than I am, because I'm never intimidated by not being the smartest person in the room. And so that's how we've been able to manage really the family dynamic aspect, and all of it never at the detriment of our own home and our own family. Those were some of the key things that we needed to ring fence up front.
Awesome. I love that. I love that. And if you were going to do it all over again, knowing what you know now, having all the hindsight that you have at this current moment, would you change anything about your journey and how you've done things in terms of building the business, building the team that you guys have right now? And yeah, would you change anything, or are you happy with the way things have sort of like panned out and the journey that you guys have taken?
I wouldn't change much because it would mean taking away from the very critical points of learning and growth. It's I suppose it's in myself, and I know this now, or at least I'm learning and growing through this now, around, because I lead with myself, and I connect, like I look for that connection. I have sometimes found myself in compromised because I think people are, depending on who you're dealing with, people are for themselves. And I think for me, well, let me rephrase that differently. I would wish I learned some boundaries earlier, being able to create a safe distance between connecting and maintaining a boundary. Because as a younger leader, I didn't have those boundaries. And so it meant being taken advantage of in certain respects, because you connected with Kulani's situation so much, you extended yourself beyond what was acceptable in the professional sense, right?
Yeah.
You build really honest relationships or friendships with people, because at the end of the day, you're bound to connect. And at the end of the day, some of these guys were my peers and I was leading them. And when I was feeling human and not superhuman, I just thought, I just want to go out and have a drink with these guys because they're fun and they're my peers.
Yeah.
But it's being able to constantly, and leadership is also a lonely walk, and it shouldn't have to be.
Yeah.
Isolated walk, because it's you can't run with the crowd because you lose perspective, vantage point, and because if we're all out here drunk from the agency party from the night before, who's waking up and making decisions, and who's waking up and thinking about deadlines that need to be met? So I wouldn't change much about the journey itself. It is me that I would prepare better or equip better to be able to live through some of those instances.
Awesome. Thank you. I love that. In fact, I'm so immersed in this conversation, and I'm so low-key sad that it has to end, but thank you so much. When people are looking for you, and when I say you, I'm talking the services of Met Black, where do they find you guys?
So we're on LinkedIn. I think I'm quite active on LinkedIn. Sadly, not on any other social media in my individual capacity, but we're very active on LinkedIn as Matt Black Africa. We're also on online. So our website is probably the primary platform for this, which is mattblack.africa as a URL. And overall, I think it's, keeping up with us on socials, which I think we're undergoing a very exciting journey at the moment of a facelift, if I may, which
nice.
will soon which speaks to, I think, really our focus, our new focus and our new chosen position that touches on the hybridity of agency and consultancy. And we're beginning to make inroads into the rest of Africa, which, we couldn't really claim that we service emerging markets because the whole of Africa is emerging at this point. We can't just limit ourselves to South Africa in that emergence, because there's so much opportunities in other geographies within the continent. So very exciting to collaborate across different regions in Africa. We're already beginning to work with some of our clients who have footprint in those regions, and it's a great thing for us. So I think as an organization, if I were to bring it back, we're being students at this moment.
Love it.
And so the slight rebrand really speaks to this new identity, which we're also obsessed with.
Awesome. This has been a great conversation. Thank you so much. And I know that the people listening have found extreme value in your learnings, and that they're going to take away a lot from this conversation that they can build into themselves and also into their businesses as well. Thank you so much for your time.
It is an absolute pleasure. I am humbled by the opportunity that through a connection that we had, you saw some value in me being able to share my story and my experiences in leading and informing and creating an organization and leading people. Thank you so much. And look forward to any potential engagements that come out of this.
Awesome. Until next time, thank you and chat soon. Bye, everybody.